Hi everyone. Well, it's become clear from the many comments that you all love to hear about the Ndrangheta, which means, of course, that we have to take another dive into that very topic. So this time we're going to talk about Giovanni Tegano. Now, as you all know, Ndrangheta is the name given to the criminal organisation born in Calabria around the 19th century, even though it's now spread throughout the world. In fact, starting from Italy, then passing through Canada, South America, West Africa, and as far as Australia, it's now considered one of the most powerful and dangerous criminal organisations in the world. Thanks to its ramifications and contacts developed over the years, it has managed to reach even drug traffickers from on the other side of the globe, which has allowed the Ndrangheta to exponentially increase its earnings and, of course, its turnover. Now, amongst the various criminal organisations present in the world, and certainly in Italy, the Ndrangheta is perhaps the one most linked to traditional ceremonies, with the internal structure built essentially around the family unit. Now, the members of a family nucleus, in fact called cosca or ndrina, are linked together by blood, and for this reason the cases of turncoats, at least until recently, have always been relatively few. In fact, a pentito would have had to turn against his own family and would have had to rat on his close relatives, siblings and parents. And this has always kept the number very low of those who took the decision to collaborate with prosecutors. Well, at least until recently. Nowadays, the pressure and encouragement from state and society as a whole have increased the number of turncoats. Now, numerous characters, bosses and gangsters have followed one another over the years and have increased the ranks of this fearsome organisation. And one of them was Giovanni Tegano, boss of the Ndrina de Stefano and head of the local of Archi, a suburb to the north of Reggio Calabria. So let's take a look at the life of this mafioso, at his actions, at his long years as a fugitive, and what's made him so dangerous within the Ndrangheta. So let's start from his origins and rise to power. Now, understanding this character and all the dynamics that led him to rise to the top of the Ndrangheta and then to the various moments where he lived as a fugitive actually isn't simple. Giovanni Tegano was born in 1939 in Reggio Calabria, and in a short time he managed to climb the criminal hierarchy to confirm himself as the local chief of the district of Archi and boss of the Ndrina de Stefano. As young as 30 years old, he shows his presence and importance as a member of the Calabrian Mafia, participating in the summit of Montalto, a famous summit in 1969, between key members of the Ndrangheta. And as often happens with crime families, war between different families is a pretty common reality, and Giovanni was involved in his fair share. Giovanni Tegano becomes one of the prominent protagonists of the Second Mafia War, a period in which he manages to consolidate his status with a significant use of force and violence. From 1985 to 1991, in fact, the Second Mafia War breaks out, a conflict that occurred between the various Ndrini of the area that actually couldn't find agreement between themselves to manage the capital that they had accumulated by then. And this bloody clash, which follows the previous conflict between the Mafia in the 1970s, created carnage, huge bloodshed in the city of Reggio Calabria, with more than 600 murders. Tagano, together with his brothers, takes a very active role in this clash and contributes as an exponent of the De Stefano Cosca. In those years, many strategic murders were committed that left the telltale signature of Giovanni Tegano. All of this blood spilt would result in Tagano being in prison for life, but that happens later on in his life and in our story. But as a result of such a violent phase, Giovanni Tegano in the 1990s becomes the new head of the Ndrina de Stefano and confirms himself as one of the most important bosses of the Calabrian Mafia. Over the years, he's the subject of a number of big investigations against the Ndrangheta, but Tagano always finds a way to flee, as they tend to do, and continue to run his business whilst in hiding. He makes the list of the top 30 most dangerous fugitives in Italy. So, as I mentioned, Tagano lived for many years as a fugitive, but in 1993, he manages to go into hiding and disappear for 17 years until 2010, when he is finally arrested and then subjected to hard prison, which is a punishment imposed on the big mafia bosses to prevent them continuing running the families from prison. Now, his arrest has been considered a great success for the state and for the justice system. and undoubtedly represented a hard blow to the Calabrian underworld. Tagano has in fact played leading roles during the clashes and the war, proving to be an undisputed, bloody and fearsome protagonist of the Calabrian mafia. After his arrest, which occurred in the city of Reggio Calabria, in a curious turn of events, he found himself standing in handcuffs in front of police headquarters whilst a large crowd gathered and gave him a round of applause, with some calling out to him as the Man of Peace. And the reason for this nickname was explained by one of the key Ndrangheta turncoats called Nino Lo Giudice. In fact, while he lived in hiding, Tagano had messages sent inside the prison network to avert possible conflicts and tensions between the Ndrine. Not only that, he also tried to affiliate people who could ensure peace and stability amongst the Calabrian underworld. Now, this was obviously done with the sole intent to ensure tranquility of the Ndrangheta's operations, and of course the possibility to move freely in its activities, undisturbed and without drawing too much legal attention. But many perceive this gesture made by the boss as a simple act of peace during the bloody years of war. Years later, in 2019, after Tagano had already been incarcerated in his cell for some time, the investigation was reopened into the murder of magistrate Antonino Scopellite, a death that occurred in 1991. Along with many names, including exponents of Cosa Nostra, Tagano's name was listed in the register of suspects over that particular murder. But Giovanni Tegano died on July the 7th, 2021, inside the Opera prison in the north of Italy. He died as one of the most prominent and violent Ndrangheta bosses. So there you have it, another fascinating insight into the key figures in the history of the Ndrangheta. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to click on that subscribe button if you did, as we've loads more videos coming up and you won't want to miss them once they're released. So until next time, ciao.